Okay, we are now live. 7:27. I'll give the others another couple minutes.
You didn't hear from anybody that they weren't coming, did you?
No, only Sal, but he's here. All right, let's close this. Okay. And I will share that screen. Okay.
Jill, Frank Weber's on the attendee side.
Okay. Let me bring him over. Let me find my over here. All right, I just moved him over. Let me see if anybody else.
I don't see anybody else on the attendee side.
All right, good. Thank you for pointing that out.
You are welcome.
It's time to start the meeting. I can't with these notifications. All right, it is 7:30 and here's Sal Giordano and Matt. Awesome. The only one that we don't have is
Mr. Dunn.
Mr. Dunn. So, okay. Oh, I am going to start the meeting. Let me just get my agenda up. Can you guys see that agenda?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so we will call the meeting to order. Okay, pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10, I'm so sorry, mute this. Let me start again. Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the board office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the township clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. The board will take formal action on payment of bills and other agenda items. Mr. Mara?
Thank you, Mr. Khan. The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of this board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Mara?
Ms. Burns,
Here.
Ms. Callie,
Here.
Mr. DePrima,
Here.
Mr. Dunn,
Present.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Put in plenty and give me a
Here.
few.
Mr. Giordano,
Here.
Mr. Silikowski,
Here.
Mr. Weber,
Here.
Mr. Carroll.
Here.
A quorum exists.
Okay, and let's Let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and justice
for all.
for all.
Just a few.
Thank you. Okay, let me go back to the agenda. Okay. Code of, who wants to read the Code of Ethics next week?
I'll do it.
Okay, Mrs. Kelly, gotcha. All right, and of course there's our district goals and our board goals. Now, next we have the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion?
Not this.
Please.
No, we're not voting. We're not voting.
Oh,
this week.
sorry. Sorry. Did everybody get a chance to go over the minutes? Maybe I'll ask that. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Nope. All right. Then we will have Mr. Rita represent to the board, and we do have recognition next week.
Correction, that should say the following 12th grade students.
12th, right? Yeah. But that's really exciting.
We do have some pretty smart second graders too, though. I would, point that out, but probably 12th graders.
I wouldn't put it past them, honestly. But that'll be exciting to recognize them. And Superintendent's Report, will you have anything, or do you have anything tonight, Mr. Cittadino, or?
No, next week, we're going to have the Superintendent's Report and Progress Towards Goals. The Superintendent's Report will be a report based upon our district assessments that we used to obtain information about the learning goals and the growth of our students that are administered throughout the course of the year. And Dr. Colangio will be reporting on that, as well as during Progress Towards Goals, giving us a first look at summer programs that we're going to put in addition to the ESY program and the Title I programs to address any learning loss that students may have had. And students will be recommended for the program, and parents will have the opportunity to register their children for the program that will take place in the month of July.
Excellent, thank you. Will we have any correspondence, Mr. Mara?
Yeah, as of today, there is no correspondence.
Thank you. Okay, so now what I will do is open it up to the hearing of the residents, and this is only for agenda items only, specifically action items that will be on the agenda tonight. So there's 2 action items on the agenda tonight. So if anyone has anything they would like to say before we vote on those 2 items, now is the time to call in. I will put there. Okay, so let me find my participants. So what you can do is raise your hand if anybody has anything to say. And I will give you a few seconds to raise, give you time to get your hand raised in the chat. And then we will close the hearing of the residents. Okay, so seeing no hands, I am going to close the hearing of the residents right now, and we will close that portion. All right, moving on. Okay. All right, policy. We're going to present policy for first reading. Anybody have any questions, concerns, need explanation on anything that Mr. Parton maybe can clarify with any of the policies?
Yeah, I have a question on the Strauss SMA blurb that we have just listed various number of items, but it doesn't really tell us what the specific recommendations are on the revisions. Obviously, the ones that are abolished take care of themselves or that are new. So are we going to get a more comprehensive explanation on policy so we can opine as needed?
Well, Mr. Weber, the vast majority of the revisions, and it actually in the Strauss SMA, it's like a 10-page, 12-page document. It does talk about the changes and the reasons for them. A lot of the changes are update changes, consolidation changes in areas like family leave and in the Earned Sick Leave Act. The board member resignation and removal bylaw is a substantive change because there was a case that came down in 2020 that said that if a board member misses 3 meetings, that person is subject to removal. It doesn't have to be 3 regular action meetings. The rollover from No Child Left Behind to Every Student Succeeds Act is language. So too is the change from having many family leave policies because of the inconsistencies between state and federal to having one more comprehensive, longer, but more comprehensive and maybe marginally easier to understand policy. And then the other section is the No Child Left Behind required language policies. So there isn't really a single area in here where the board is rendering its opinion. These are all legal compliance policies. It's a lot, but it's not really elective issues.
No, I understand that, Chris, but for example, the one item you mentioned, P014145, I read some of the case law on it, and it's some of the questions that come in my mind is this a mandatory removal after 3, or is it an optional one for the board depending on circumstances, those kind of things?
On that one, Mrs. DeCara, if you don't mind my getting into this just briefly,
Oh, go right ahead.
the operation of that policy is that it's always a good cause standard. If there's a board member who is in an unfortunate family or personal medical situation, obviously meetings can and are routinely excused. If it's a board member who loses interest, that is a very different situation. What this change is that the board has the authority, not a mandate, but the authority under the statute, which is 18A 12-2, to remove another member with prior notice to that member and the member having an opportunity to explain himself or herself. So it is not mandatory, but it is worth clarifying because a lot of people get the impression, and many districts have said that it's only if you miss 3 regular action meetings in a row. That is not the case. So that's a clarification now.
Yeah, and the other thing is with the advent of Zoom driven by the pandemic, if a board member is not able to physically attend, is there going to be, can a policy recommendation be made with due cause that board member, whoever he or she may be, can participate in a meeting remotely?
That is not clearly supported by law. There was a Kutch decision out of Jackson Township about 25 years ago now that says that the Open Public Meetings Act, except unless otherwise ordered by the governor, and here we are, the public is entitled to see the decisions being made. The public is entitled to see who is with you in the room and who is not. We are in the great and hopefully only exception in our lifetimes to that rule. But at this point, when the board returns to in-person meetings, once the board makes the decision as a body, meaning 5+, that it is time to return to in-person meetings, there is no provision for an individual board member to say, I'm going to participate my way. You may be excused from participation if you have a health situation, certainly, or a work situation on a night-to-night basis. But no, there is no authority under the Open Public Meetings Act for an individual board member to decide that the board is meeting in person, but I'm meeting on the phone.
Now, my question is though, can the board as a body supplement this statute as it stands with allowing that provision if they choose to do so?
No, the Cuts decision indicates that the board does not have that authority.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weber, did you get the attachment with the policies? Did you look at that or? And this is-
I didn't, whatever I got, I was not able to open other than the one page, which essentially showed just showed the summary sheet of all the
titles.
individual.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay, because I just wanted to clarify that we did get emailed a big, I don't even know how many pages it was, but we did, so you weren't able to open it, okay.
No.
That's why I wasn't sure, okay.
Okay.
But everybody
thank you.
else was able to open it, yes? Yeah, okay, good, because just want to make sure it's being sent in the right format. All right, does anybody else have any other questions or concerns regarding any of the policies? No? All right. Moving on, there's nothing in curriculum professional development. A couple things in athletics.
Can I just ask a question on athletics, please?
Yes. Oh, I couldn't find you. There you are.
I'm assuming those are the two positions for the new middle school baseball teams.
It looks like assistant coaches. Correct?
I think they'd be the, I don't know, are they the assistant to Mr. Donahue being a head coach?
That's a coach at the middle school is an assistant coach to the varsity coach. It's not an assistant to the coach at the middle school.
But those are for the two new teams we installed a month ago, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so they're called, there is no head coach at the middle
No
school.
head coach at the middle school.
Got it. All right. Okay, finance. This is an action item, so I am going to ask for a motion on finance.
I'll move it.
Hallie will second.
Okay. Ms. Callie and Ms. Ellis Foster. Okay, do we have any discussions on finance item number 1 or 2?
Mr. Carroll, on number 2, due to a quarantine situation in our accounts payable department, I'm just asking the board to give me the authorization to pay bills between meetings as we do during the month of July. It may not be necessary, but I just wanted the authorization. I didn't want to be late on paying medical premiums and utility bills in case the situation gets any worse.
All right, does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding that? Okay. I will roll, can we have a roll call, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes,
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
resolution 1 and 2 pass.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about items 3 through 8? No? All righty. How about non-certificated personnel office 1 and 2? Any questions?
We will have additional retirements here, and we will have a name replacing the staff member in number 1.
Number 1, okay. All right, very good. Mr. Weber, I assume you are going to do the retirements, or is that going to be Mr. Silikowski?
well, I'm happy to share
Okay. You guys work it out.
whatever Matt wants to do. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give the total amount of years and you read the names. How does that sound?
Fine. Sounds like a
Good.
plan.
Look at that, working together.
I will check your math.
Okay.
All
By
right.
the way, so far I have 138 years, okay, from the 2, 4, 6 people that are retiring. And according to Dr. Hoker, we're gonna have a couple more, hopefully, right? Yes.
We will have more.
That's a lot of years. All right, non-certificated personnel operational, any questions, concerns? No, okay. Then we have non-certificated personnel other. Here's some more retirements, leaves of absence. Nothing. Okay, let me scroll down. Now we have certificated personnel. And we have an action item here, items 1 and 2. So I will need a motion for certificated personnel items 1 and 2.
Dunn will make a motion, certificate personnel items 1 and 2, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Can I have a second?
Burns will second.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. Any questions, concerns, discussion? No. Okay. Mr. Mara, roll call, please.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Miss Alice Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes,
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 and 2 pass.
All right. Now we have more. If there's any discussions on. I'm just going to keep on scrolling. Till I get it.
We will have additions here as well.
You will, yeah.
Um, We will have new hires and we will have additional retirements.
Okay. Keep putting them in your calculator, Mr. Solakowski.
Yes.
All right. Lots of stuff here. I'm going to keep scrolling till it's going to scroll slowly. I don't want to get people dizzy. All right, non-certificated personnel transportation, there is nothing. And then we have supplies, equipment, and services. Anybody have any discussion, questions on any of this? Concerns? No? Okay. All righty. And we're moving on. Transportation. Questions, concerns? No. And miscellaneous. Approve the following minutes. Committees are the right, everybody has the right attendees in the committees? Yes, all righty. Fire drills. Okay, board secretary and board business, any questions? No?
Madam President,
Yes,
I'm not sure if you want to put this under board secretary and board business or under new items. But I think it's time for the Board of Education to convene in-person meetings. I think that, with vaccinations and with things getting much better and with our teachers and students going back to school, I think it's time for us as a Board of Ed to have in-person meetings. And I think if we take the necessary safety protocols and have the public still virtual, I think it's time for us to come out of our shells and meet in person. And I think that we should do it sooner than later. I know that many other Board of Educations are moving towards in-person meetings at this point. And I feel that it's important for us to do so for this school year, since we have our students and teachers back in school. So with that said, I would like to see what our fellow board members' opinion is, but I'm ready to make a motion to have this as an add-on to Tuesday's meeting if we can't agree to make this happen.
Would
Sec-
anybody, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll second his motion.
Okay,
I will third it. Mr. Dunn, I would like to open up probably in June. Close up the year with the in-person meeting, and then in August we'll continue, and hopefully everything will go well.
okay, does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I
Yes,
agree with Mr. Dunn also, but I don't even think we should wait till June. I mean, I'm ready. I've been ready. So as soon as possible, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I
Okay.
think the one thing I would say is, would we, I'm not sure everyone's vaccination status, and different people have, different ways in the progress. So one thing I would ask is if there is a member who is not comfortable going in either because of their health issues, if they have health issues of someone at home, that is an option they're given. Maybe May's meeting or something, maybe. The other thing I would suggest, I know when we looked at before, just kind of working through the logistics could take a little bit of time of how managing in person with Zoom and everybody hearing everything. There is some logistics involved around that. And I would almost also look at, would we use maybe the cafeteria space, not necessarily the TV room, again, just to have spacing, if we're going to have to work through the logistics. Are we going to have the kids coming in and videotaping it, all that kind of things, just to get some of those logistics down. Do we invite a limited public? Do we not? Just kind of work through how it would actually technically work, just make sure we have everything in place.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. There's some, I knew this was coming soon, and I know that we're going back. Well, first of all, before I say anything, does anybody else have any input before I?
Well, going back to what Kelly just said, I think the law in the state is, or the recommendation from the governor is now that 16-year-old students can get the vaccine. Now, obviously, it's a personal choice whether they choose to do that or not, or their parents has to have input. But certainly, if you could encourage people who are on the TV crew who are willing to do that and also on the crew, that would certainly solve one of those problems.
Anybody else?
yes.
Mr. Giordano, there's some feedback happening somewhere.
I think that was me. I got booted off.
Yeah, you're on twice, Jill.
I'm sorry.
Sal, did you want to speak?
Yeah, yes. We could do what we did last March, where we were distanced from each other and we still communicated with the Zoom with the public. And I think Ms. Burns, I think you also were on the Zoom, so we could do that too. So for the board members that don't want to be in person, they could also communicate through the Zoom. So I think that would be a pretty good one. And especially with the budget meeting, which should be very exciting. So I think even with limited amount of people, we should still have some people there giving their input.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mr. Kara, just as a matter of law, while the governor's state of public health emergency continues, you do have some flexibility as far as going back and still having members participate by Zoom and having public access by Zoom. It's not unlike the hybrid classes that your teaching staff members have been doing. But you are required to allow the public to be there to the extent possible if they choose to be. So if you go to the cafeteria, you go to the auditorium, whatever room we use, you would want to do it as a someplace where you can have some space for people, not just the public, but also for the board to spread out a little bit. And as far as the procedure, Mr. Dunn was asking if it's new business, if it's an add-on, where it should fall. If you're going to do this, you'd want to provide the public with maximum notice. So probably the way to do it would be to revise miscellaneous item number 1 for next week, which is the meeting dates for May, and the format is location via Zoom. So that would be the place to notify people next Tuesday if there is going to be a change, if that's the consensus of the board.
Where'd I go? I passed miscellaneous.
That'd be page 23 on my version.
Let's see. Yeah, so then we would have to, do we make a motion tonight to change that for next week, or how do we, to vote on it next week for May?
Yeah, you can have continue the discussion now and then have a straw poll, and that straw poll would result in a change or a clarification of the agenda for next week, and then you'd vote on it.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say? Does anybody not want to, does anybody feel uncomfortable?
I just want to ask a question, but
Go ahead.
Mr. Parton, how does the mask mandate from the governor's office fill in on that? Do attendees have to wear masks?
Yes, you remain under the public health emergency by the governor. You remain under the auspices of the CDC and the Department of Health. And most simply, to answer your question, you remain under your own policy, and you remain under the road back. So yes, social distancing and masks are absolutely required if you do your live meetings. It is not optional at this time. That may change.
So everybody on screen and everybody who's attending has to wear a mask?
Yes. Well, not the people who are on screen from home, but yes,
Right.
everybody who is there and on screen, certainly, yes.
Mm-hmm. Jill, you're muted.
Still muted.
I know
Sorry, I got booted off, so I missed most of the conversation. So if we go back in person, then Mr. Parton, did you say that then it's open to the public to attend?
Yes, if you are there in person, you cannot be in person without inviting the public to also be there in person. Subject, of course, to social distancing and the resulting room capacity limits. You know, that you're always subject to the fire code, even if before this madness began. So you have space for the public to the extent that space is available.
What is it right
And
now, Chris? 50%?
that space is determined by the guidelines, right? So what, you just have somebody standing at the door and saying, okay, you can come in and you can't because we're full according to social distancing.
Yes, that is correct. There is an executive order that specifically excludes public Board of Education meetings from gathering limits. However, that does not abrogate the road back social distancing requirements. So yes,
Yeah.
when the room is full, your bouncer would leap into action and prevent people from coming in and invite them to participate virtually, because you would be doing a hybrid board meeting.
So whatever room we're in, it would have to be figured out how many people can attend with 6 foot distancing, or whatever the distancing rules are at the time.
Yes.
Isn't the distancing details now 3 feet as per CDC guidelines with classrooms? I would assume that applies also for gatherings now, correct?
Yes, it does. And it's subject to further change upwards or downwards, depending on what happens. But yeah, and you do not have an aggregate cap because it's a board meeting, but you do have a room cap, whatever that may be.
Mr. Parton, just for
facilities to accommodate 100 people if we utilize the auditorium. I just think it's a good time. It's a good thing to do to show the public that, you know what, we're ready to get back together as a group, and I think that it would be a positive for our district.
Mr. Parton, I just want to get clarification on that, because my understanding of the 3 foot is that it only applies to children in the classroom, that social distancing change, and not to teachers and adults in schools. That they still fall under 6 feet.
Yes, I'm sorry. That is correct. The aggregate for adult to adult spread is 6 feet. So I mean, with masking tapes in the auditorium, masking tape on chairs that are in play and not in play, you would have to mark it out, because there will be a certain point where people could conceivably be turned away. You don't have the capacity that you've had tonight. You've got 36 participants. That was much higher in the past, and that would probably be easy. If you want to have people indicate their intention to attend, you can do that, but the result would be the same whether or not people give you forewarning that they're going to be there or not. When you hit that room limit, that's where you are.
The other question I have is, I know that I'm talking to other superintendents as their boards are exploring this too. And I don't know if, if it's a policy item or if it's an item in which you have seen from other districts in which you serve, that they're basically not riding both horses. So if it's public meeting, when public's invited, they're not inviting comment from home because the people in the public have no way to hear the comment from the people at home. Only the people who have board members on laptops would have that access. So it's either you're going to have public comment from the audience or no audience participation and public comment from home.
Yeah, that's logistics. And it is true that boards are struggling with that. Fortunately, the Department of Community Affairs regulations that were promulgated months after this had already started do provide the board with that authority. If you're having a hybrid meeting, you're right, the members of the public and even members of the board might not be able to hear those questions. So it is your discretion whether to permit remote questions during an in-person meeting.
So that would be something we would have to work out prior and advise the public, I guess, when we advertise the meeting.
That's correct.
I would think you'd have that as part of your resolution, just so we have a clear understanding as the personnel putting together the meeting, what your guidlines are.
Yeah,
I
legally,
would just
you
ask,
would need to have 48 hours notice of that because it's a notice of a public meeting. But pragmatically, among this group, you would want to talk about it much earlier than 48 hours before the meeting.
Right.
I would also ask if in the logistics, would the participants have to fill out a health screening in order to come in? Would that be a component of, something that would be required? And just thinking about, again, logistics and the board members having to be 6 feet apart and being able to film that, and how I'm picturing it on the stage, and we're usually back to back. I think those tables are probably close to 6 feet, but we usually have 2 people at them. So that would logistically have to be doubled up and set up differently than we've had. But the health screening is a question.
Well, I don't know if the health screening goes on in restaurants or any of those other places, so I don't know how much would you be bound up to do a health screening. But the other observation is we have 3 gymnasiums that are 6,800 square feet at the elementary level and one at 5,700, which certainly could accommodate or not, but it's a catch-22. So as Mr. Parton says, if we can have 2 sets of people who are actually there who may want to be there physically, and people who are would rather be on Zoom from home, and you're gonna, no matter what you do, half of them are gonna be disenfranchised to ask questions.
Sal, you go ahead, Sal.
Thank you. As far as distancing for us, I think the TV studio is actually better than the auditorium. As Mr. Giordano said, if you remember last year, the last meeting we had, we were kind of staggered. I don't remember who set up the tables. It might even been Kelly. Somebody was down, somebody was up, somebody was down, somebody was up. Like, we had different levels. And as far as if we're allowing, I don't want to use the word allowing, if we're making it able for people at home to log in, I think they should have the same opportunity to ask questions. Also, they shouldn't be jeopardized because they don't want to come in person. Just 2 thoughts.
Well, one way that some districts are addressing that issue, Sal, and you're right, it is awkward. Some districts are using the email in your questions mechanism that you already have in place before noon the day of the meeting. There's a specific email address that's not only in the bylaw, but could be included in the notice. And to say if people are participating remotely, they would need to email their questions if they wish for those questions to be read and entertained at the meeting.
Kelly, you're muted.
Thanks. What I would suggest, maybe, Jill and, Mr. Cittadino kind of work this offline and come back. I know we'd also, I would suggest we talk to Mr. Dajewski on options of where we can go. I did have some discussions with him last year. Some issues with there's certain places the TV can broadcast from and cannot. So that would be, we'd want to check with him. I know, as I said, the one time we did think about the cafeteria because it could go there. There is more room to spread out there. However, again, just going through the Zoom, because if not everybody can hear, the public who are in the building cannot have access to Zoom, so they do not hear what's going on. So I think those are the things we need to work through as far as when we talk about public comment. They won't hear unless somebody else is on Zoom. So if somebody, so there's those logistics. So if somebody's speaking in a microphone, it might not be heard by everybody. So those are, I think, I would suggest we kind of go back and look at all the various issues and, ask Jill if, you kind of spearhead that and then come back to us and say, hey, here's our options based on all the technical issues, based on, our guidelines. Because the one thing I would say too about, as Dr. Hoger said, the screening, different from a restaurant, our children are back in the building the next day. So we want to make sure we have it as safe, maybe a place that could be quarantined off or anything like that. And we don't want to somehow put them at risk because somebody comes in who didn't fill out a screening or didn't get a check and somehow contaminates an area where our students are. And I think we need to take that extra precaution just to make sure we're not the ones who end up getting quarantined or having the school quarantined in any form.
We're reinventing the wheel here. We have people in our gymnasiums as it is. Is everyone that comes to our gymnasium for an event or some sort of practice, are they screened? We have a month. So if we have a motion on the table here or a straw poll to add it to our agenda for next week to have the administration determine what the best course of action is. But I think it's time for us to meet in person. And what I'm hearing here is, there's all good questions, but these aren't questions that haven't been dealt with by other boards or other municipalities and other functions. This is something which we can work through. And I think it's time. I think that, the more we procrastinate, and there are serious, questions, but I think that, David Cittadino and Dr. Hoker and the team with Joe Mara can figure this out. So by our May business meeting, we can be in person. I don't think it's a big thing to figure out here. Seriously, that's my opinion.
I don't think anybody's objecting. I think we're just talking the issues. I don't think there's
Well,
anybody here
I
who's
hear you,
objecting
Kelly.
to it.
I hear you. And, I think it's time. I think it's time that we find a way to make it happen. We have our students back. We have our teachers back. Now it's time for us to get back. And I think it's important. So if we can figure it out, let's do that. And let's put something on the agenda so it's written in stone so that there's a date for us to shoot for and achieve.
Right, but the answers to some of these questions have to be had before we can vote.
Correct. Correct. We can't make these decisions when we're not together as a board. We have to talk it all out now.
That last meeting that we had, because I remember that very distinctly, because I was already getting paranoid, and we were separated. We were on the stage in the TV studio. We were not separated by 6 feet. What we had was 2 rows, but we were all level. And we just moved the tables around. So some people were in front and some people were behind. But, there were no CDC guidelines back there. Nobody had a measuring tape. But I'm not against it. But like Kelly said, nobody's objecting. But these are questions that we need answers to before we can before we can put it to a vote.
Well, I disagree with you. I think that if we discuss and say we're going to go for our May business meeting as our date, I'm confident that the administration can find ways to make it happen, whether it's going to have in the gymnasium or we're going to have it in the high school auditorium. There's ways of getting this done. And I think that, if we're going to put this off because of not establishing a date so that we can vet this further, I think, we're just, pushing it out there further so that we don't have to meet in person. That's my opinion. I think it's time that we do meet in person. And I'm going to make a motion to see if we or a straw poll as an add-on tonight for next meeting to add this on to the agenda for a vote to establish a quasi or a hybrid situation for our next a business meeting, not our agenda session, but a business meeting.
But you're kind of saying the same thing, is that if Mr. Dunn is proposing that the miscellaneous item number 1 be changed to say the first 2 meetings listed are via Zoom and the May 18th regular meeting is in person, that could go on your agenda for next week if that's the will of the board. And then when that motion comes up, the administration could inform you of the obstacles that they have identified, and then the board can vote based upon where we lie. And if there are questions that have not been answered by that point or can't be answered by that point, then you'll know that too.
Right. So we're talking about meeting for the May 18th meeting in person, not the May 6th or May 11th.
That's correct.
proposing,
Next
Mr.
business
Dunn?
meeting.
Mhm. All right.
Thank you for that
So
clarification.
Give the board, the administration time to work out all the details. I agree with Mr. Dunn, okay? The finance meeting, we should have in person. And then in June, hopefully we can have the regular meetings in person. Then open up the new year in August for everybody to come in.
well, the public hearing on the budget will be via Zoom. Right? That's
The budget Zoom and in person, I think. That's my opinion.
That's not what we're saying, though. That's not what everyone is saying. That would be.
I agree with that. Don't say everyone, because I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I agree with it too.
Yeah.
So, okay, because that's not what I was saying before. That was clarified. What I had said before was we would do May 6th and May 11th Zoom and May 18th regular, there was a couple of people that agreed. I don't know if everybody did. But now.
That's why we take a poll.
Saying too.
I'm sorry?
That's why we take a poll.
Right. Jill, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I thought that's what Rich was saying as well.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
what I
that was-
okay.
Business meeting.
No,
That
he
was
was saying
Mr.
all
Dunn's
three.
proposal.
All three.
Now-
in person.
Well,
Alright.
either way, let me just elaborate. Either way, I would like to have an in-person meeting as soon as possible, whether it's the budget meeting or the next regularly scheduled business meeting. The agenda session, obviously, you can go virtual at this point until we have all the facts in place. But I'm open to either or. I'm ready to come back in person, and I want to show the public that this board, can meet in person, just like we're asking our teachers and students to do as well. So I think it's time. So what we need to do as a group to work the logistics out, I'm sure we can do that. And if it's the will of the board to make it the budget hearing meeting, oh, well and good. I'm open for either or.
So Mr. Teresa, we haven't heard from you yet.
So I would agree with having the public hearing budget in public also. The only issue that I'm hearing is that then we won't have full participation because people on Zoom and people who are in person aren't going to be able to hear each other. And I don't think that that's the opportune time to try something new, especially when it's, the budget that we're talking about. That's just my opinion.
I think the problem between the people on Zoom and the people being in the audience is a technical problem that should be fairly easily resolved. It's really not rocket science. It should be, if you have speakers that are plugged into the Zoom system, so people that don't have Zoom when they're at the building, they can hear the whole context of the meeting. I don't know why that would be a problem.
I don't know. I know, Kelly, you ran a couple of meetings last year. And I think Mrs. Burns was on the Zoom, right? And I know, could we really hear her? I don't really remember, but.
And so I think that's why we need to talk to Mr. Jazewski. So, I mean, I would say, can we give the week to find out answers to this so that when we come back next week, we can get a better feeling of, would we be able to pull it off by the 6th? And if so, yes, let's move forward. Because again, nobody's objecting to this. Everyone agrees with you, Mr. Dunn. We just want to work out the logistics. So I think if we can, again, talk to Mr. Jazewski about what sound systems, where, how far can they go, where can we do it? And then come back next week saying, here's the constraints, here's how we can do it. And, can we do it for the 6th? Great, and then but I think, I think Mrs. Burns brings up a good point. We just don't want to disenfranchise anyone with the budget meeting. That could only,
Right.
So I think can we go and have the investigation done of how can everybody participate? How would it work? What kind of speakers do we need? How far can the broadcast go from? Where are the outlets? There's those kind of things. I don't think it's not that they can't be done. We just need to find that out before
Yeah.
we make a decision.
Yeah, my only thing is I'm just not comfortable saying, yes, let's do it before we know how to do it. I know, you could say, yeah, let's do it and they'll figure it out. I don't know how comfortable I am with that because, it's difficult to run. It's difficult to run a Zoom meeting. It's difficult to run this webinar. And then I'm trying to see, I'm trying to think of the logistics between with doing the hybrid. I mean, I know the teachers do it all the time, God bless them. And then having the people call in. I just, again, want to make sure that everyone is able to call in. Will we have to limit and just say, if you do want to speak, you have to come to the meeting, or do what the policy that we have in place now, send your email before noon the day of to the specific board secretary email that's designated for that. And these are things, as I think Mr. Cittadino mentioned, should really be in the resolution. Do you guys agree, that when we're going to make a resolution, these things need to be in it, or do they not have to be in it? And we can just say, we'll figure it out. I mean, or do we need, let me ask this question. Do we need to have a resolution next week in order to make a motion to vote on it? Let me ask that question. Does it need to be currently on the agenda in order for someone to say, I want to make a motion for this?
No, you are sunshine for all regular action next week. So if you walk in next week with the agenda looking exactly like it looks tonight, it could still be subject to this same type of motion, discussion, and vote.
Okay.
But what you want to decide tonight is, what question are you asking the administration? If you just want to say, let's leave the agenda as it is, but please have Dave and his team advise of what the options are, then that's fine. If you want to say the question is, can we do it for the 18th? Then they'd answer that specific question. If you want to say, can we do it for the 6th? That's a slightly different question. What you want to decide tonight is what question you're asking the administration.
Okay.
And Chris, I'm sorry. So if we decide, if we have 5 votes to say, hey, we're going to put this on the next agenda, say we decide that it's going to be May 18th, next regular meeting will be a meeting that we're going to have in person. And then the board, the administration comes back to us during the week and says, oh, well, it's not feasible, or at the meeting says it's not feasible. We can withdraw that line item. So it works either direction. We can do it now or later. So I'm the feeling right now to say, hey, I want to get it on the agenda for a date that we're going to go live again. I think the more time we give people, the better off we are. And I don't want to sit here and say, well, let's wait for information. So, whatever we feel is the correct method or direction, I want to move forward with this. And I think that, if we can move it to May 18th to give the administration plenty of time to figure out the logistics, I'm willing to say, let's move, let's put it on the agenda to make May 18th, 2021, our regular business meeting, a live meeting. So there's plenty of time. There's a whole month plus for the logistics to be worked out. I'm not, really, that set on having the budget meeting live, but I definitely want to have something concrete out there that is saying this board is going to meet live in the very near future.
And Chris, could we not, if checking out the technical difficulties and try to get them resolved is not available to us at next week's meeting, could we not, I know the budget meeting is advertised for the budget only, but could you take an action item on that agenda so that if you wanted to say, I wanted to go forward on the 18th, give you more time in preparation?
Yes, you could re-sunshine for May 6th, anytime up to Monday night, May 3rd, and have that have a special action item on for that night, if that was the will of the board and that's the advice of the administration.
And that gives Mr. Krajewski more time to work out any technical difficulties.
Okay. So, all right. So what I'm hearing is some of you want to, just get information and we can always vote on it next week. And some of you want the resolution and then vote on it next week. So I guess we should do should we do a straw poll?
Motion first?
Yeah, Mr. Dunn has a proposal. It's not really a motion, but for a straw poll, and Mr. Weber seconded it early on in this discussion.
Yes.
So I think that procedurally, the way for you to go would be do a straw poll on whether the board wants to open on the 18th. And then after that, do a second straw poll on whether the board wants to open for the 6th. And then if the board says the consensus is yes to both, then it goes on the agenda as the 6th. If the consensus is yes to only the 18th, it goes on the agenda as the 18th. And if the consensus is no to both, then the agenda stays as is. And either way, or any of those three ways, Mr. Cittadino will update what the obstacles are to moving forward per the board consensus. So do a straw poll first on whether you want to have the May 18th regular action meeting be in-person/hybrid.
Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Mara, can we have a straw poll for May 18th?
Sure.
In-person/hybrid?
I have one question, Chris, please, I'm sorry. Chris, just like when we do president and vice president, if I vote yes for the 18th, that means I can't vote for the 6th?
No, it does not mean that.
Okay.
At this point, because we're doing it in this order.
Okay.
If you vote yes for 18th, you can still say, and in fact, I want to start tomorrow. You can do for the 6th. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is for the May 18th open to the public meeting. Ms. Burns, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Callie, yes or no?
This is to put it on the agenda for next week to vote.
Correct.
For the 18th, yes.
Okay, yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Absolutely, yes.
and Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
So the votes there for the 18th open public meeting are 9-0. For the 6th, Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Okay, for the May 6th open meeting to the public, it's 9-0. Straw polls only.
Straw polls.
So then, Ms. Torrey, if we can, on page 23, revise
Regular part.
item 26.1 to say that it'll be in-person/hybrid on each of those three lines. And then the administration under discussion next week will provide an update on this. And then the board will vote on it. You have not voted on it yet. This is just what you're going to be voting on.
Perfect. All right. That sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. And thank you, everyone, for that discussion.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
It's not going to change anything, to add something, just a point of clarity in case someone is planning on attending one of our events for spectators. We do screen our spectators prior to attending an athletic event within the schools. They fill out the questionnaire and they get a temperature screening. So I don't know who asked the question or who made the question, but I just don't want people from the public thinking that we do not screen on the way in.
Yeah. I know you can't walk into the building without getting a temperature check.
But if you're a spectator attending a sports event, and like right now, currently is boys volleyball, you'd have to be screened.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we were on board secretary business. Does anybody have anything else or any other questions in the board secretary business category? Okay, let me just, I think right after that, okay, now we're going to get to hearing of the residents on any school district issue. And let me get my screen up so that you can, there it is. So you can raise your hand, whoops. All right, I will give everyone a few seconds to raise your hand. We are on hearing of the residents on any agenda item only. I'm sorry.
No.
Any school district issue, sorry, wrong hearing. So I'll give you a few seconds because I know that we did have a long conversation, so people might have stepped away for a minute. So I'll give you a few seconds to raise your hand in the chat. I have one hand raised. Statistics matter. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to unmute and I'm going to ask you to state your real name for the record. Okay, statistics matter. Okay, you can unmute and state your real name, please.
Okay. Hi, this is Sarah Fournier. I had a question regarding, I guess this is for Dr. Tui, regarding ESY. I was told that for ESY services, like special services, that there would be no Zoom option. Is that correct?
As of right now, we're planning on doing an in-person ESY, yes.
Let's say that there's no option at all.
If a student is medically fragile, as the governor has already outlined, then we would try to make accommodations as best possible. If students are going on vacation because they want to go away for 4 weeks in the summer, then they would be expected to be in person.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and well, seeing no other hands raised, I will close the hearing of the residents portion of the meeting tonight. So, okay, you got him right under the wire. Bill Brock, I'm going to allow you to speak. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Please state your name for the record.
This is actually Candace Bach. Is this particular session for the residents in regards to the school and the reopening plan, or is there a different one after the meeting's over?
This is a hearing of the residents on any school district item. So whatever you can speak to, whatever your concerns are right now.
Sure. Okay. So David, on March 13th, it was 1 year ago that.
Sorry, are you speaking to Mr. Cittadino?
Yes.
Mr. Cittadino. Okay, thank you.
So on March 13th, it was 1 year that, our children have been out of a typical classroom setting. On March 19th, the CDC changed the guidelines from 6 feet to 3 feet in a classroom. And still, here we are, mid-April. And our school district is, rotating cohorts, which in theory, of course, sounds good. However, the reality is that my second grader will be going 2 extra days of in-person learning for the month of April. This school district is extremely behind in the reopening process. And
The camera doesn't work. I'm not using it.
And it has been extremely mismanaged since day one. And David, at the last Board of Ed meeting,
Mr. Cittadino, please.
You stated if the CDC relaxed the guidelines from 6 feet to 3 feet, it would be, and I quote, a game changer and expand our opportunities with the reopening. So in my opinion, there should be no hesitation with accelerating the reopening plan to 5 days next Monday, the 19th. So my question to you is, and I want factual reasons, not excuses, as to why we're not progressing with the reopening process starting next week. Thank you.
Okay. So seeing no other hands raised, I am going to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Wait, it's not going to be answered?
I'm closing the public hearing portion of the meeting.
I would like an answer. I think the residents of
Okay. Just for the record, and this has been stated every time, this isn't a Q&A. And a lot of the questions that was just asked has been stated many times. Mr. Cittadino is free to answer if he would like. Absolutely. But this is not a Q&A. But of course, Mr. Cittadino, you're welcome to respond.
I always respond, and
Yes.
And we respond as we do. I take all the questions, I write them down. Tonight, there's only one question, and then I respond to it at the end of the public comment. Do you recall that, Mr. Giordano? I just want to make sure you're on board.
No, I just didn't want it to be skipped completely. Just make, okay. Yep, thank you.
Okay, so the CDC guidelines, I want to make it clear that on March 13th of 2020, David Cittadino nor any superintendent in the state of New Jersey closed the schools. That was done by the governor of New Jersey, and it remains so until September. So I can't take account for what was done in March 13th of 2020. However, when on March 19th, the CDC made a recommendation, I don't think that everyone reads the whole recommendation. It doesn't speak to only children. It says that children in the classroom, and only in the classroom, may remain at 3 feet. Adults in the classroom with the children need to remain at 6 feet, and that's from elementary up until high school. High school, the children need to be, are recommended to be at 6 feet, middle school and high school. But in elementary school, it's 3 feet for children, and if an adult is in the classroom, it's 6 feet. Anytime the children are outside the classroom, in the hallway, and any other gathering within the school, outside the school, they need to be at 6 feet. So that is true. It is a game changer. One thing that is a concern, as we have those numbers of students coming back, that we would not be able to accommodate all the students coming back and still keep the teachers away 6 feet in the size of our classrooms. So to deal with that, what we've done is a very rigorous vaccination process that gives our staff the security to feel as though when we bring all our students back, as we examine this by the task force, and our task force did investigate the CDC guidelines, and this is the information as we in-depth read the whole report. We didn't read about just 3 feet and just closed the report. We read the whole report, and that by that time, the majority of our staff on May 3rd will have had their second vaccination. There are staff members who will not have their second vaccination, but that is the guidelines we've stuck with, and that's the date we stuck. But the majority will have had their second vaccination at that time. This district has made appointments and vaccinated over 500 people, not just staff as well, people within our community. And so that is something we've done to make our school safer. And that is why on May 3rd, all the students will be able to report back, because at that point, everyone's had a choice. Every teacher's had a choice whether they want to be vaccinated or not. And by that time, the majority have had their second vaccination. We will have a large allotment of staff members who will get their second vaccination on May 6th. But that is only because the, I guess the vaccine delivery model, or the ability to gather the vaccine, did not work out with the timelines that was projected by the federal and state government. We still have people, obviously, who are eligible to get the vaccine, who still can't get the vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson dilemma is only going to make it more difficult. So we are working towards that. So that is my answer to that question. And thank you for asking.
Okay. All right. With that, does anybody have, we have old business? Does anybody have any old business?
Yeah.
And Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, so back to the resolution to bring the meetings in person. It is right on time for the 5 days a week for the students to come back at the beginning of May. And as Mr. Citizino has done, is vaccinated all the teachers that want to be vaccinated. So by May, everybody, all the staff should have the vaccine if they wanted it. So that should be the end of that, unless, of course, Fauci and the CDC move the goalposts again. But if that doesn't happen, then we should be ready to go forward at full speed ahead, 5 days a week and in-person meetings for the Board of Education. And I hope we could do it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. And just, you know, again, to clarify, everybody wants to be back and we just want to do it safely. So, oh,
Are you gonna
Teresa
ask for- I
Burns?
think this might be new business. So,
Okay. New business. We're on new business now.
so I just wanted to say, I know that we're looking to move forward and start having meetings and being in the building. I'm just hoping that then if we're going to be treating all of our extracurricular activities equitable, because I know if we're having sports in the buildings, that children who enjoy art programs and music in the plays, I know that their parents are also looking to see their children perform. So that's just all I have to say about that. Thank you.
And Jill, I wasn't muted before. I mean, I was muted before. I just wanted to raise the question of the CDC, or the conventional wisdom has said that the likelihood of spreading this disease on a contact surface was far less of a risk than it had been portrayed as for most of the pandemic.
Okay. Would anybody else like to speak?
Yeah, new business. I am scheduling a curriculum meeting on April 29th, and it'll be Zoom. And I'm welcoming everybody to come to the meeting. We're working out the details right now with Dr. Tui.
Sorry, you said what date, Mr. Solikowski?
April 29th, a Thursday.
April 29th. Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody, you're muted, Mr. Citadino.
I just have an item for new business just to bring up on the, I guess, on the heels of what we discussed with vaccinations. First, let me just say, you know, I have to extreme thank you to Penn Medical Group for coming to us and providing vaccinations on site within our schools. Prior to that, we had been able to get 125 appointments in and around the area for our staff. And with the Penn Medical visit that day, I'm sorry, we had over 125, but we had another 286 persons that were vaccinated. The majority of them, or a good portion of them, were our staff from within our buildings. Then others were personnel from the township and senior citizens who couldn't get appointments anywhere else. I think this township owes a big debt of gratitude to Lisa from OB Thames. She was like a workhorse to try to get people into vaccination appointments, from EMS people, volunteer firemen, police officers, MUA personnel. She had everyone coming in here every time we had another appointment available from the vaccination. And Debbie, my secretary, Trish was registering people. Audrey Baker and the entire nursing staff did an incredible job helping with the screening of people after they were vaccinated to make sure that there was no reactions and they were safe. So I want to just thank everyone who took part in that. Now, the major dilemma that it causes for us, and again, this is the quickest way to get it done, is to have these clinics. And we had 2 clinics in one day. Usually Penn Medical does a clinic in the morning and a clinic in the afternoon. But because of it was post-Easter and getting the vaccines was limited, we signed up to have 2 sessions in one day So we wouldn't have to wait another week to get a second session, because we wanted to get our staff vaccinated as soon as possible. And again, anybody from Old Bridge, we want to get them vaccinated as soon as possible, because these numbers aren't going down because of the variants. It's not impact. So we wanted to make sure we get as many shots in arms as possible. So on that day, we vaccinated over 125 staff members to our schools with Moderna. And this is something went over with the task force. Anyone who's had a second dose of Moderna, I think Mr. Dunn spoke about this, there's anywhere from 30 to 50% of the people getting the second dose have an adverse reaction the day after, flu-like symptoms, anything from achy fever. And anyone who's had, of all of our staff who's had the second dose of Moderna prior to this, we're experiencing a large call out just because of the illness that is a side effect from that second dose. So you can imagine our concern for May 6th is our second dose for everyone on that day. We vaccinated 286 people in one day, the majority of them staff, and now May 6th, we're going to have to second vaccinate them. There is no flexibility in my date. They don't do it on Fridays. It has to be 28 days after the Moderna. So this is what the administration is having to do, and it's a proposal only because it's going to be a Friday in May. We're probably going to experience a lot of call outs anyway that day from personal days or whatever that we have, and experiencing a lot of uncertainty. So on May 26th was originally scheduled the field day, the district field day. It was originally scheduled as a remote day, as of the Wisdom Wednesday, the Wellness Wednesday event. My proposal, and I just wanted to present this to the board, is that May 7th will be a remote day, because this way the staff that is not feeling well or second, they don't have to necessarily call out. They can hopefully get through the day, but otherwise we're not going to have enough staff and substitutes to manage that day with that many staff out as the possibility. I don't want to not plan for that and then have massive absences on that day. We won't be able to deal with the needs of our students. So as planned, the elementaries will have the field day, which was already planned for May 26th. We're going to move it to May 7th, have an all remote event, and the middle school and high school will also learn remotely on that day. And that'll help us address that second date. And by that point, like I said, any staff member who wanted a vaccine would have had a vaccine by the day in their second dose by early May. Any thoughts, concerns?
Yes, Dave, I just want to sincerely thank you for really thinking out of the box, with really being ahead of the curve with getting Penn Medical in and other providers to get our teachers vaccinated. I think, your sense of urgency, saved us time, and we're able to, get back to some sort of normalcy based upon your commitment of working out of the box. And I know you've gotten a lot of criticism. However, you know what, it's definitely the right thing to praise you for thinking out of the box. I can tell you that you're right about the 6th and 7th, because, I had the second dose of Moderna back in late January, and 12 to 18 hours later, I came down with the flu. I had 102 fever for 12 hours, and, I was feeling really bad, but it went away as quickly as it came, and then I was feeling great. So again, I just want to, sincerely thank you for really putting the time in and thinking out of the box by getting our teachers vaccinated, getting that done. I know that's a lot of administrative and a lot of rigmarole to get that done, but you were definitely ahead of the curve there, and I appreciate it. And you mentioned one person in particular. I know that there's a whole litany of individuals who played a very critical role with opening our schools for clinics. But you're right, Lisa Giuliano with OB Thames, she's a dedicated individual to this town, and she definitely needs a lot of praise also. She did a lot. She coordinated with me, with the fire departments here in Old Bridge, to get our people vaccinated along with the county. But I know that she's played a very big role as well. But Dave, thank you for thinking out of the box and doing a superb job with getting our teachers the much needed vaccine.
To that point, Rich, just while you're talking about that, there's a lot of, I had about 6 staff members who were looking for the Johnson & Johnson. They had concerns about the second day concern about Moderna, or they wanted the Johnson & Johnson's only one shot, and then after 10 days you're fully vaccinated. But obviously with the concerns with Johnson & Johnson now they're looking for Moderna or Pfizer vaccinations. And while this meeting is going on, I'm going back and forth with Lisa. We're getting up to 60 people, not just I don't have 60 staff members, but again, township personnel and township people over to Piscataway by noon tomorrow, because they have some opportunities for people who are eligible to be vaccinated. And they made it a priority to get us Old Bridge people there, and me working with Penn Medical. So while we're doing this, Lisa's working the back end of this meeting to get everyone over there. So again, can't say enough of good things about what's going on to get the people of Old Bridge vaccinated.
Terrific. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Would anyone else like to, first of all, does anybody else have any new business? And if not, would anyone like to have any closing statements before we adjourn? I don't believe we have executive session tonight, right, Mr. Parton?
You do.
I think.
We don't have
You do.
executive session,
All right.
but we have, I
board
didn't know if we were allowed to call it executive session or if we were supposed to call it just training. I didn't know.
It is executive session for that purpose.
Oh, okay, all right. But we can adjourn this meeting before we go into that, or no, we adjourn after?
What you'll do is you will not be back out to the public. You're going to close the public portion and you will adjourn at the end of executive session.
Got it, okay. All right, but prior to doing that, does anybody have anything else to say publicly? Mr. Giordano?
Yes, I believe I need to say this. Based on recent events, I just want to give my sympathy to everyone that is severely affected by the virus or has unfortunately passed away from the virus and other health issues during this time. And I will continue to do my best to do the best for the most people of Old Bridge based on their risk tolerance. And vaccinations are coming. It's good. Mr. Cedino did a good job. And everyone do their own research, eat right, exercise, and do the best they could do to make their immune system better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to executive session? Okay. So I just need a motion to go into executive session.
Burns will make the motion.
Burns, okay. And second?
Callie will second.
Callie. And this is executive session for board training. And roll call, please.
You all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So we're going into executive session at 8:50 p.m.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to everyone that attended. And we will see you next week. Board members, please stay on. All right,
I'm just going to step for a second.
Go ahead. I was going to say, if anybody wants to step away while Ms. Freeman logs on.
And Mr. Caro, I'm turning it over to the SBA now, so I will see all of you next week.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parton.
Thank you.
And Jill, you can stop recording and take us off YouTube also.
You got it.
Thank you.